PowerPoint of cross infection. So, okay, is PPT visible for everyone, students? Kindly let me know.
Yes.
Yes,
Perfect.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Perfect, perfect. So, okay. So coming to the cross infection. So in the last lecture, we discussed about cross infection. So the subject is Introduction to Quality and Patient Safety, and subject code is BMLS 1006. So here in the unit 3, so we are in the unit 3 right now. So in the unit 3, we have biomedical waste management, and we also have the PPE, personal protective equipment, and we have one more topic which is monitoring and controlling the cross infection. So currently I'm dealing the cross infection, monitoring and controlling the cross infection in this particular lecture. So then I discussed about the definition of cross infection. So what do you mean by cross infection? So cross infection means it is defined as the transmission of infectious agent among the patients or between the healthcare workers, which can be doctors, nurses, or other clinical or non-clinical staff. So from that, when the patient acquiring a new infection due to hospital environment means those kind of infections are called as cross infection. Can anyone say other name for cross infection? What is the other name for cross infection?
HAI, sir.
Very good. So
Or
HAI, that means
nosocomial.
hospital
Or
acquired
nosocomial.
infection.
Nosocomial
Yes.
infection.
Nosocomial.
Yes, it is also called as a hospital acquired infection, or it is also called as nosocomial infection. So nosocomial infection will be the precise word to be used. Okay. So nosocomial infection means hospital acquired infection or hospital borne infections are called as nosocomial infections, or simply they are called as cross infections. That means these are the infections that will be acquired when the patient is admitted in the hospital environment. So due to the environmental factors, the patient may get another additional infection. So such infections are called as cross infections or hospital acquired infection or nosocomial infection. So now we need to prevent such nosocomial infections to the patient. So how can we prevent these nosocomial infections? Because patient already have a predetermined disease. So with that, along with his disease, if he is getting secondary, if he is getting an additional infection, means such additional infection may make the patient even more worse. Patient may become even more weak due to the nosocomial infection. So we need to strictly prevent such infections, the infection to the patient. So how to prevent these infections we will discuss in this lecture. So that is called cross infection or nosocomial or hospital acquired infection. So the same definition, whatever you said is absolutely correct. And so this nosocomial infection can occur by two methods of transmission. It can be direct contact with the patient or through the indirect contact. So direct contact can be through sexual transmission or through the secretions of the patient, such as droplets or his coughing material. Through that we can get infection, or through even touching his infected hands or touching the patient or kissing the patient can also cause then also cause acquiring the infection. So all these things are called as a direct contact with the patient, and indirect contact means we may not touch the patient directly, but we may touch the substances where the patient may be used, such as patient used materials or patient used food, or through insects or through dust or through other carriers we may get the infection. So we have two methods of getting infection. One is a direct contact or through indirect contact. Now we need to minimize these kind of things. So how can we minimize direct contact? Means by isolating the patient in a separate room. So by isolating the patient and by minimizing the entry to this patient room, we can able to decrease the chance of getting cross infection to the patient. Then also we need to maintain certain safety measures, such as wearing gloves, proper aseptic measures in the hospital, or prevention of insects in the hospital, or maintaining hygiene environment in the hospital. So by maintaining this kind of hygiene parameters, we can able to reduce the risk of getting cross infection to the patient. So we need to ensure to keep certain barriers to prevent either direct contact or indirect contact of the patient. So by that we can able to prevent the cross infection. So now let us see the chain of infection. Only if we are knowing how an infectious agent will pass, then only we can able to restrict its transmission in the society or in the hospital. So let us see the chain of infection. So this is called the chain of infection. So the chain of infection always starts with an infectious agent. It can be a bacteria, it can be a parasite, it can be a virus, or it can be a fungi. So infectious agent, for example, let us take a parasite, Taenia solium. So the Taenia solium is a parasite. It is an intestinal parasite. Usually this Taenia solium will present in the pigs. So pigs are the natural reservoirs of the Taenia solium. So usually Taenia solium will present in the pig. Now this pig will go to the stool. Okay, it will discharge its fecal material. Through that fecal material, this parasite will exit from the reservoir. So the portal of exit of Taenia solium will be the anal route. Okay, feco-oral route. So feco-oral route will be the exit of this Taenia solium. So that is called portal of exit. Portal of exit can be through anus, through mouth, through droplets, through nasal secretions. So all these are portal of exit. So after portal of exit, now the parasite will transmit to a new host. So this transmission can occur by biological transmission or through mechanical transmission. So biological transmission means maybe a mosquito may land on this host. So this parasite may enter into the mosquito, and mosquito will be a transmission, or mosquito will be a carrier. So that is called biological transmission. Whereas mechanical transmission means a fly will land on the fecal material. Now this parasite will attach to the fly legs. Now through these legs, through the fly legs, the parasite will transmit. So that is called the mode of transmission. So after mode of transmission, how the parasite entering into the host, either through mouth, either through nasal, either through blood, or through other means of transport. So how the parasite entering into the host is called portal of entry. Then it will attack the susceptible host. It can be a healthy person, it can be a immunocompromised person, it can be a it can be an infant, just born baby, or it can be an old person. So depending upon the host susceptibility, the pathogen will infect the host. So this is the basic steps in chain of infection. We have an infectious agent, reservoir, portal of exit, mode of transmission, portal of entry, and susceptible host. Now we need to break this chain to prevent transmission of this particular infection. So we need to break the chain to prevent the transmission of infection. So are you following me, students? Are you listening?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Let me download attendance. Very good. So we need to break this chain in order to prevent the infection, right? So let us see in detail about the chain of infection with a more elaborate, in-depth content. So yeah, I have kept one more. Where is it? Yeah, this one. So let us see once again the chain of infection in detail. So here the chain of infection. So the causative agent can be bacteria, fungi, parasites, or viruses. Then reservoir. Reservoir can be humans, animals, inanimate objects such as any pencil or any other objects. Okay. So reservoirs can be humans, animals, or inanimate objects. Then after reservoir, it will go for portal of exit. So portal of exit can be through blood, intestinal tract, respiratory tract, skin, or mucous membranes. Okay, through blood means some person has HIV. So if he has bleeding means when we touch that blood, we may get HIV. So portal of exit can be blood, intestinal tract through the fecal material, respiratory tract, COVID-19, lung infections, or skin and mucous infections can also skin and mucous layer. So these are the portal of exit. Then mode of transmission. So mode of transmission can be airborne, that means through the air it can transmit, or through contact it may transmit, or through vectors it may transmit. Vectors such as biological vectors, mosquitoes, sandflies, all these are vectors. Okay, so these are the mode of transmission. It can be airborne, through contact, or through vectors the pathogen will transmit. Then portal of entry. So how the pathogen will enter into our body? So it can enter through blood, it can enter through intestinal tract, it can enter through mucosal membrane, it can also enter through non-intact skin and respiratory tract. That means there are certain bacteria, for example, trypanosoma, syphilis. So syphilis causing bacteria can enter by your skin itself. It will drill hole into the skin and it will enter into the blood. Very, very dangerous bacteria. Okay. So trypanosoma, I forgot syphilis full name. Pallidum. Trypanosoma pallidum. Okay, Trypanosoma pallidum is the bacteria that will cause syphilis. So this syphilis bacteria will enter through the skin. Okay, so that is the portal of entry. So portal of entry of parasites can be pathogens can be blood, intestinal tract, mucosal membrane, non-intact skin, or respiratory tract. So through this, the parasite can enter into the body. So after entering into the body, it will go through the susceptible host. So the susceptible host can be depending upon age, elder, young, or teenage person, depending upon health status. Health status means if he has any chronic illness, immune deficiency, nutrition deficiency, if the patient is in chemotherapy or therapies or radiation or surgery. So all these patients are highly susceptible for getting infections. Okay, so this is the susceptible host. So this is the complete chain of infection. If I ask this question, can you write, students? If I ask elaborate in detail about chain of infection, then you should write chain of infection contains of infectious agent, reservoir, portal of exit, transmission, entry, and susceptible host. Causative agents, examples, bacteria, fungi, parasite. Reservoirs can be humans, animals, inanimate. Exit can be blood, intestinal, skin, membrane. Transmission can be airborne, contact vector. Entry can be intestinal, mucosal, non-intact, and respiratory tract, and a susceptible host can be age, health status. Can you write all these parameters if I ask you a question? Students, is this concept clear for everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Very good. So this is called chain of infection, and this is the examples of each stage of the chain of infection. Then I discussed about mode of transmission. So everything is in this slide, students. So first we discussed the definition of cross infection. Then we discussed about method of transmission. Method of transmission can be either direct contact or by indirect contact. Then I discussed about chain of infection, and you know the individual steps of chain of infection. Then we will discuss about prevention of cross infection. How to prevent these cross infections in the hospital. This is our next important topic. How to prevent this cross infection. This cross infection can be prevented by having well ventilated hospitals, by maintaining hygiene in the hospital, by maintaining safe food and water supply in the hospital, by maintaining hygiene bedpans, urinals, and sputum cups in the hospital, by maintaining safe disposal of urine, stool, and sputum, that means safe biomedical waste management in the hospital, and by properly discarding the dressings collected from the patient, that means once again biomedical waste management. And also all the staff members must regularly follow personal protective, they must wear personal protective equipment, and they must follow GLP procedures, good laboratory practices. Okay, so good laboratory practices include washing hands. Okay, so by maintaining all these parameters, we can able to prevent cross infection in the hospital by having proper ventilation to the hospital, by maintaining hygiene, by maintaining safe food and water supply, proper biomedical waste management, and proper GLP, following strict GLP. Okay, so GLP can be good laboratory practices. So by this we can able to prevent the cross infection. Okay, so is this clear for everyone? Now I will discuss in detail about prevention. Here we have only 7 points, but let us elaborate these 7 points. Okay, so it will be somewhat boring. I will make it as interesting as I can. Okay, so let us see prevention of cross infection or strategies to prevent cross infection in the hospital. So a quick revision, a quick topic, listen. So these are the 7 strategies that we can follow to prevent cross infection or to prevent hospital associated infection or to prevent nosocomial infection. So the first and foremost thing of the 7 strategies is hand hygiene. So we need to have a proper hand hygiene protocols in the hospital. So because most of the time through contact only, it can be either direct contact or indirect contact, mostly through contact only we will get cross infection. So that contact can be minimized by frequently sanitizing our hands by alcohol. So by 90% alcohol, if we are sanitizing our hands, means most of the bacteria or pathogens will be killed, destroyed. So by having proper hand hygiene procedures, we can limit or we can prevent the cross infection. By maintaining environmental hygiene of the hospital and the ward, we can prevent the nosocomial infection. By frequent screening of patients, by frequent screening the patients who may have diseases, by that we can able to prevent cross infection. By regular surveillance, by maintaining antibiotic resistant survey, we can prevent a cross infection. And by following safety guidelines and safety culture in the society, we can prevent cross infection. So the same thing I will elaborate in the next slides. Okay, so first one is safety hand hygiene. So there is a way of cleaning our hands. So we in what timing or in what conditions we must wash the hand. So we must wash the hand before touching the patient, before cleaning or aseptic procedures, after body fluid exposure, after touching the patient, and after touching patient surroundings, we need to wash the hands. That means before touching the patient, we should wash the hands, and after touching the patient, we need to wash the hand. Why we are washing our hands before touching the patient? Because we may already have some pathogens in our body, in the hands. If you are directly touching the patient, you may transmitting a new pathogen to the patient. So that is why before touching the patient, we must wash our hands. Then after touching the patient, once again, we should wash the hands, right? Then there is a procedure of washing the hand. Okay, so first you need to pour water in the hands, then you need to apply your soap, then you need to apply on the palm, then you need to interlock the fingers and you should clean your finger interlocks, then you should clean your thumb, then you should also clean your tips of your fingers like this by moving your hands in this way. Then you need to individually wash your all fingers starting with your thumb. Then you need to wash your center palm. Then you should wash your wrist, near wrist area you need to wash. Then you should clean off the soap under the warm water. Then after cleaning your hand, keep in mind, never touch the tap with your hand. If you are touching the tap once again, means you are contaminating once again. So try to close the tap with your elbow rather than try to prevent touching the tap after cleaning your hands. Okay, so you need to close the tap with your elbow. So that is why we will have a specialized taps in the hospitals, where you will have a lever like apparatus, so that you can easily shut down the tap. Okay, you can easily close the tap. So don't touch the tap after cleaning your hands. Okay, then dry with a dry towel. So dry out your palm with a dry towel, then let it air dry. So wait for some 1 minute to air dry your hands. So after air drying them, you can wear gloves or you can safely go outside. So this is the procedure of washing your hands. So this is the hand hygiene procedure. Wet your palms, then apply soap, apply on the palm, then start interlocking your fingers and clean in the fingers. Then also clean your thumb, then interlock your fingers in such a way and clean your palms and fingers. Then clean your thumb, clean your palm, then also clean your wrist, wash your hand, close the tap without touching it, and dry out with a dry cloth, then air dry your hands. So this is the procedure of doing hand hygiene. Okay, basic steps, but very important. Okay, so there is a way of cleaning your hands also, and this is utmost important, right? So this is how you need to wash your hands. So proper hand hygiene protocols will minimize the impact of a transmission of cross infection to the patient. Then other than hand hygiene procedures, we have see, I have given once again an elaborated notes for washing hands. You can read it by yourself. Okay, so purpose of hand washing and precautions to be taken during hand washing, and that's it. So this is the procedure of washing your hands. Then the second one is environmental hygiene. So I need not to say much. Obviously, whatever environment we have. Yes, you can please. So in the we also ensure to have a proper environmental hygiene. If the environment is not so hygiene, definitely the patient will get the cross infection. So environmental hygiene is very important. By the way, where are you doing, Anish? In the TNB?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So you came from TNB. Okay, okay. Okay. Go, sir. Please. All right. So this environmental hygiene also very important. Okay, I'm not going to read these things. You need to ensure the surrounding environment where the patient placed should be clean and hygiene. That is all about environmental hygiene. Then screening cohort patients. So frequently we need to screen the patients whether they developed any drug resistant pathogens or whether they have any secondary or any other infections to the patient. So by identifying those infected patients, we can able to prevent the possible future cross contamination or future cross infection in the hospital or in the community. So frequent screening the patients is very important. Especially we need to screen these 5 pathogens. So the 5 pathogens that we need to screen are malaria, HIV, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and syphilis. So these 5 are very important, highly infectious pathogens that the patients will carry, and also tuberculosis. So you need to frequently screen for the presence of tuberculosis, HIV, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, malaria, and syphilis. So these are highly infectious. So we need to screen patients frequently to identify these pathogens. Are you listening me, students? Are you following me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Kindly maintain notes during the class, okay? Because I'm teaching many things. If you are just listening, it won't be, you won't absorb all the things, right? So kindly write the notes, okay? Running notes during the lecture. Okay, so frequent screening of patient is important. Then surveillance. So surveillance means in the community, we need to do frequent surveillance, whether they have to see the status of the population. If they are getting any, by surveilling the population, we may know any future possible outbreak, any viral outbreak or any pathogenic outbreak can be immediately we can identify and we can start giving the public awareness, and we can prevent the infection right in the beginning by conducting surveillance. Especially we are really concerned about AMRs. So AMR means antimicrobial resistance. So antimicrobial resistance means some microbes will resistant to certain drugs. If microorganisms are developing resistance to the tablets means to the drugs means it will be really challenging to treat such a patients, because the bacteria or the pathogens are not responding to the tablets. They developed resistance and they will they will keep on growing even after giving tablets to the patient. So if that is the case, it will be really challenging to treat these kind of patients and these kind of pathogens. So we need to always keep an eye on development of any antibiotic resistance in the community. If we suspected any such resistance, immediately we need to alert the system. We need to identify the group, and we need to start giving appropriate healthcare support to the group to prevent future outbreaks. It can be endemic, pandemic, or it can be endemic, epidemic, or pandemic. Okay, so frequent surveillance is one important parameter to limit the cross infection or to prevent cross infection to the community. Then, as I said, antibiotic stewardship. Simply, we need to strictly observe whether is there any development of any antibiotic resistance by any bacteria. If we suspected any antibiotic resistance, definitely we need to be alert and we need to take appropriate measures to minimize such to eliminate such antibiotic resistant pathogens, right? So antibiotic resistance need to be controlled, it need to be monitored, it need to be stopped right in the beginning. So antibiotic resistance is really a global problem now. I don't know whether you know or not. In the beginning, penicillin is the wonderful drug we know. So penicillin is a nice antibiotic drug which will kill almost all types of bacteria. So in the 1970s, Fleming discovered this penicillin, and everyone appraised Fleming because he discovered a drug that can kill literally all types of pathogens. But Fleming also came to know that It is the one who discovered the penicillin. Penicillin was discovered by Fleming. He got Nobel Prize. And penicillin, the Fleming also knows that bacteria are very smart. He knows that bacteria may develop resistance to penicillin, and people are vigorously using penicillin. And it is like we are teaching bacteria to develop resistance to the penicillin. In the beginning, 90% of bacteria used to die in the presence of penicillin. But today, 90% of bacteria are resistant to penicillin. Almost 90% of bacteria are resistant to penicillin today. Now you can understand the consequences of antibiotic resistance. Today, penicillin is not working. No more penicillin. Almost all bacteria adapted to penicillin and they are surviving with penicillin. They developed resistance to the penicillin. So antibiotics is really antibiotic resistance is really a global problem. The next outbreak, the next pandemic can be an antibiotic resistant bacteria. For example, our tuberculosis developed resistance to all 12 drugs we know. So there is an extreme drug resistant tuberculosis strain which is there out there, especially in India itself. So we are really concerned if this extreme drug resistant TB started spreading into the community, means game over. So we need to be very cautious, okay, on antibiotic resistance. Kindly mute yourself, students. Let me download your attendance in between. So we need to keep an eye on the antibiotic resistance. Then we need to follow strict guidelines that are given by the authorities. Authorities such as the Center for Disease Control or World Health Organization will give certain guidelines to prevent these cross infections, and we need to strictly abide to these guidelines to prevent cross infections. They will give the best practices, best evidence-based, good laboratory practices. They will give the best, which can be easily worked out. So they will give the best solutions, and we need to follow those guidelines to prevent cross infections in the community. So we need to follow the guidelines. Then obviously, no matter whatever we are doing, the ultimate thing is to provide patient safety. For this purpose only we are doing all these parameters to prevent these cross infections or whatever we are doing. So for patient safety only we are doing all these things. And also I want to introduce two important words, students. Just to remember these words from in your future classes you will encounter this word a lot. So see here, I'm giving you two scenarios. Listen. Per day 100 people are dying in a district, okay, in a hospital. For example, 100 people in a very large hospital, maybe it is a 10,000 bedded hospital, okay, so there 100 death is normal. So 100 people dying per day. The number of death per day is called as mortality rate. Number of death per day is called mortality rate. Mortality rate. Mortality, sorry, mortality, okay, mortality rate. It is mortality rate means death rate is called as mortality rate, number of deaths per day or per year or per hour. So that is called mortality rate. Death rate is called as mortality rate. Then we have another word called morbidity rate. Morbidity rate. Morbidity. 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 Okay. Morbidity. Morbidity. DITY. Morbidity rate. Morbidity rate means number of patients becoming sick. How many people becoming sick is called morbidity rate. For example, per day some 1,000 people will in one hospital, 1,000 people or in one area 1,000 people may become sick. They may develop any fever or any clinical condition. It can be fever, diarrhea, vomiting, anything. It can be diarrhea, it can be vomiting, it can be bleeding, it can be infection, it can be sepsis, anything. So number of people falling sick per day is called as morbidity rate, and number of people that are dying per day is called as mortality rate. Is these two definitions clear for everyone? Morbidity rate means number of people falling sick. Okay. Number of people becoming deceased is called morbidity rate, and number of people dying is called as, or death rate is called as mortality rate. Students, is these two definitions clear for everyone? Morbidity rate and mortality rate.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
yes. Now listen. If we prevent cross infections means we can decrease mortality rate and we can also decrease morbidity rate. So morbidity rate and mortality rate can be decreased by maintaining all our 7 strategies of cross infection prevention. So by maintaining cross infection preventions or these strategies, we can able to decrease this mortality rate and we can also decrease morbidity rate. Believe it or not, previously when our grandparents, they used to give birth to some 7 to 8 child. So out of 8 children, some 2 to 3 will survive. Only 2 to 3 children will come up to 20, up to 60 to 70 years. Only 3 children will survive for a long time, but all other 4 children will die. Because in the olden times they don't know about cross infections, they don't know proper medical treatment. The medicine is in its infancy, right? The medical care is it's in its early stages, so there is a high mortality rate in the previous days. Okay. That is why in a family, they out of 10 children, some only 6 children will survive and 4 children will die. So due to more mortality rate only, they used to consume more children. So at least they are hoping that at least some 2 to 3 will survive for a long time. But today the mortality rate has been drastically reduced to 0.1%. Previously it is almost 22. Some 20 to 27% mortality rate per year, but today the mortality rate has been drastically reduced to 0.1% because of advancements in medical care and advancements in the knowledge that we acquired on the cross infections. So obviously by knowing all these things, we can really save the patient lives and the people lives. So today we can safely have even one child, and we are very assured that our child won't die for any disease. Or even if our child becomes sick, we can able to keep him alive. We can able to treat the disease. So today the modern medicine has been so much advanced. We have a very good laboratory team. We have very good testing equipment. We have good knowledge on testing. We have good knowledge on treating the patient. We have good knowledge on giving the complete therapy to the patient throughout his course of infection. So by this modern knowledge, we have drastically reduced the mortality rate and also morbidity rate, which is a fantastic feat of 21st century. So obviously patient safety is the paramount for anything, right? So the individual life is very important. So that is all about patient safety. Then that's it, students. So this is all about cross infection. And if I go depth now, so I have given like aseptic conditions. You need to wash your hands. You need to prevent. You need to use your face mask. You need to use your lab coat. You need to use your goggles. So you need to use your personal protective equipment parallelly to limit the cross infection. So wearing personal protective equipment is also obviously important. So I have given notes regarding how to wear a gown, how to remove a gown, how to keep a goggle, how to remove goggle, how to remove gloves, how to wear gloves. So all these things I have given in these notes. You can go through it, very basic, you can understand by yourself. So let me take a complete overview on today's lecture. So the complete overview of today's lecture is, so in order to prevent cross infection in the hospital, the hospitals must be well ventilated. Hospitals must have a proper ventilation, proper air and light supply, sunlight. Then general cleanliness should be maintained in the hospital. So cleanliness such as room should left free from dust particles, furnitures and other articles should be cleaned frequently. Mattress, pillows and washable items should be exposed to the sunlight. Whitewashing of the walks. Okay, so whitewashing of the walks means I don't know what is it. and painting on doors. So paintings and windows should be it should be corrosive proof. Okay, they should be properly painted, and also there should be proper water supply to the ward, and also proper water supply to the kitchen, and the bathroom should be clean. So the lavatory should be clean. It should have proper stool, urine sputum should be properly discarded, and disposal of written discarded dressings. So discarded dressing should be discarded according to the biomedical waste management, and there should not be any rats or insects in the hospital. Nurse here, nurse or any healthcare worker, not only was nurse, all healthcare workers. Okay, so healthcare worker must plan her work to prevent frequently in going and arm. You should not roam in the patient ward unnecessarily. Very, very important. People usually, even people, patient family members will walk like it is a cinema hall, right? A patient ward is not a cinema hall. It is something which is highly infectious. If you are keep on roaming in the patient ward, means literally you are cross contaminating the community. You are cross contaminating the ward. Patient life will be at risk. So we need to restrict the entry to the patient wards, especially if it is emergency care or ICUs. So that is why even family members are not allowed to go to see the patient. If the patient is in ICU, only one person is allowed to see, that too for a limited time. So you need to be very cautious. Why we are keeping these restrictions is because to prevent cross infection only. Okay, so you need to follow all these things. Then healthcare worker must receive necessary vaccination before nursing patients. Simply vaccination. This is not vaccination, it is vaccination. We already discussed, right? So we need to get vaccinated before we are going for our work, our healthcare works. Okay, then a nurse must frequently wash the hands. Any healthcare worker must wash hands. We should wear all the personal protective equipment. Then after finishing work, we should once again clean our hands. Then she leaves. Okay, whatever personal protective equipment we used, those equipment must be leave in the ward itself. You should not carry this equipment outside the ward. If you are carrying this equipment outside the ward, you are cross contaminating the outside community. So remove your gloves, your apron, your goggles, everything inside the lab itself. Okay, then wash your hands thoroughly and frequently in order to minimize the cross infection. So these are the major preventive actions we can take to prevent the cross infection. So major preventive measures include proper ventilation, proper cleanliness in the ward, then a proper water supply, food supply, hygiene in the bathrooms or lavatory, proper biomedical waste management, prevention of rodents or any insects in the ward, restricting the entry to the patient wards, then proper vaccination of the healthcare workers, proper wearing of personal protective equipment, proper washing or hand sanitizing procedures, and to remove proper disposal or proper storage of your personal protective equipment. Usually your personal protective equipment should be leave in the ward itself, not outside the ward. And also we need to frequently wash our hands. So by following these preventive measures, we can able to prevent the cross infection. Okay, so that's it. So that's it, students. So this is all about the cross infection and its prevention. So is the concept clear for everyone? Let me do a quick revision of today's lecture. Then we can move to the second topic. So in today's lecture, we discussed about cross infection. So we discussed about the definition of cross infection. We came to know that cross infection is also called as a hospital-acquired infection, or it is also called nosocomial infection. Then we discussed that mode of transmission of cross infection. It can be transmitted by direct contact, or it can also be transmitted by indirect contact. Then we discussed about the chain of infection. The chain of infection has the following parameters such as infectious agent, reservoir, portal of exit, transmission, entry, and susceptible host. Then we discussed about the importance of breaking the chain of infection to prevent the cross infection in the community. Then we discussed about the 7 strategies to prevent cross infection. The 7 strategies include hand hygiene procedures, environmental hygiene, screening the patient, surveillance, antibiotic surveillance, following guidelines and safety culture to the society. We can able to prevent the cross infection. Then we discussed about the importance of hand hygiene and the procedure of hand hygiene. Then we discussed about the environmental hygiene. Then we discussed about the individual steps in the cross infection, such as causative agents include bacteria, fungi, parasites, virus. Reservoir can be humans, animals, inanimate objects. Portal of exit can be blood, intestinal tract, respiratory tract, mucosal, and membranes. And mode of transmission can be airborne, contact, or vector. And portal of entry can be blood, intestine tract, mucus, non-intact skin or respiratory tract. And susceptible hosts include depending upon the age and the health status. Then we discussed about the parameters to prevent cross infection. The same thing regarding the personal protective equipment, how to don the PPE and how to doff that PPE. This is all about cross infection. Any doubts in this topic? Shall I move on to the next topic, or shall we in the next class? What is your opinion, students?
In the next class. In the next class.
In the next class, right?
Yes, sir.
This will be more
Only 15
content.
minutes are left. Only 15 minutes are left.
Okay, afternoon. I think today P1, right? Lab.
Yes,
P1
sir.
or
Yes,
P2?
sir.
P1, okay.
P1.
Today you should write record, okay. Afternoon you must write record. Start writing your first 4 experiments. I have already submitted lab manual in the group. Kindly start writing record. For that you need to buy a record first. So before 1 o'clock, try to buy a new record and start writing it, okay. So I will see you around 1:30 or 1:15, okay. So see you in the afternoon class. So thank you very much, students. Thank you very much. You can leave.
Thank you,
Class
sir.
first. Yeah, see you. Tomorrow we can start sterilization topic, okay? So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.